Hello, Heathens, and welcome back to Spinning the Wheel podcast with me, your ever balancing host, Megan Angus, a foot in the light and a foot in the dark. Hi, long time no talk. I mean, I have been alone in my room talking to myself this entire time. I just haven't been posting that. So, hi, welcome to you. If this is your first time here, you don't know what I'm talking about, and everything is wonderful. If you are a longtime listener and follower, thanks for your patience. Here we are. Um, let's come back to it, right? First and foremost, uh sending energy out to all oppressed peoples around the planet. We are keeping our witchcraft and our magic centered in global liberation for all people at all times. That's literally what's up, and that's how it's going to be from now on. Also, sending out lots of love and power and protection and strength to all of our folks in the Southeast US, in the Caribbean, in Mexico, who have been battered by these hurricanes and really intense storm systems that are rolling through. Pay attention for community aid and mutual aid groups and efforts that are happening out there. If you can help, please do. All right. Uh, do we have a lot of stuff going on in the world? Yeah. Are we going to talk about some of it here? Of course we are. And also, we've been talking about it, right? So we know what's up. We know what's up. Um, First and foremost, I really, 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 really need to say thank you to my extraordinarily patient patrons who have made it possible for me to go through my process. And I realize that I also have not shared much of my process with you all. And to be honest, I probably won't. Maybe I will in the future. I don't know. I may change my mind about that. But this last year has been a fucking journey for me. And I don't know that I'm done with it yet. But that said, stuff is shifting. What do I always say? The wheel turns and the wheel turns. And so, as the wheel is turning, I am turned as well. Um, and like I said, that's all I'm going to say about that. But here we are today, enjoying a lovely podcast. Uh, Probably. So let's get into it. Thank you, patrons. Thank you. If you love this podcast and want to continue to see it existing in the universe, please sign up for my Patreon. You can sign up for it as little as $1 to throw a tip in the tip jar. Um, Tiers only go up to $23 a month right now. I will be opening up the higher tiers eventually. I know I've been saying that for a while now, but I will be opening those back up again. But stuff is on the horizon. Things are coming, and also I don't want to talk about them a lot and jinx myself. My books are open for October, so that's a way that you can work with me in a long form format, doing the tarots, doing the astrologies. Come and have a conversation with me. Let's get into it. Okay. Upcoming stuff? Question mark? Yes. I will be at some point running my multi-week tarot fundamentals workshop. The feedback from that mostly has been it's been some of the best ass kicking that people have received in terms of learning how to read tarot. Appreciate that. So I will have information soon about that. I am also creating a workshop that is an introduction to the Wheel of the Year as I see it. The very best way to get information about that stuff and other things that are happening is sign up to my Patreon. You can sign up for free now. You can follow me on Patreon for free. I will always blast stuff there first and foremost, and then also, and or you can sign up to my newsletter through my website. I will blast stuff there early as well, and then you can follow me on socials, or you can just check out my website or whatever, and I will announce things there also. Okay. Let us, once again, ground into this week's energy. This is 2024 Mabon season, new Micromoon annular solar eclipse in Libra, lunar week. Who fucking knows? Because, man, as an aside, here I'm going to go on a little tangent. Already, we're 5 minutes in. Welcome to me doing this. A couple years ago, a year and a half ago, not this cycle, the last cycle of the wheel, those who have been studying with me for a very long time know that I orient the wheel to celestial events, past and present, that are observed by various groups. And for quite some time now, we have had our wheel oriented to the Lunar New Year that resets the calendar for all of our friends and ancestors in Asia and India. And I had my reasons for doing that. And two cycles ago, I switched it up and I reoriented our wheel to spring equinox, which is like 6-ish weeks later, give or take, right? And sort of the new moon that was closest to the spring equinox at that time. I kept that up for this year's cycle as well, and I don't like it. I don't like it. So, as of next January, February, we will be restarting or reorienting the wheel back or forward to that lunar cycle. More info about that later. And if you're like, what does all of that mean? We'll talk about it later. Okay, so let's get into this week of 2024 Mabon season, new Micromoon annular solar eclipse in Libra. First and foremost, let us ground into the season that we are in, which is Mabon. This is fall equinox, right? And so our big, powerful words that we are working with, the big energies and ideas that we're working with in Mabon season are the harvest, as well as purification and shifting from the light half of the year into the dark half of the year, and all of the stuff that comes along with that shift. When we break that down a little bit, we're talking about things like watching projects come to fruition, vitality and health, and celebrating abundance in whatever ways we might be experiencing those things. But then also the rest that we feel after labor, healing, right? So the restoration of vitality and slowing down. Further, that sense of purification, as I already mentioned, that cleaning off after the labor is done, and cleaning the workspace after the labor is done. Balance, right, between one half of the year and the other half. And atonement, which is a word that can have a lot of baggage connected to it. And finally, shifting seasons, the Underworld Journey, and, as always, Ancestor work and shadow work. Mabon officially kicks off, in some traditions, the beginning of the Underworld Journey, that we see a variety of different deities participate in various forms. In some of those traditions, that's kicking off already at this time of year. For other deities and mythical beings, this process isn't going to kick off until we hit Samhain. And for other deities, it's a very quote-unquote short 3-day journey that happens right around winter solstice, and then we come back up again. But we'll talk about all that stuff a little bit later. Okay, so that's grounding us into our Mabon energy, fall energy in general, is that kind of stuff. Witnessing the abundance, the fruition of our work, the results, ultimately, is a power word that we can work with here. Resting after all of that work, balancing, coming back to balance, purifying and atoning, and then ultimately getting ourselves ready for this underworld adventure that we go on every year as we move through this portion of the spiral. Okay. We also find ourselves in the tree month, the Celtic tree month of Ivy. This runs approximately from September 30th to October 27th. Different calendars have slightly different dates, as I have come to find out, but that's generally when we're working with ivy. Ivy is revered by many groups for being a plant that lives after its host plant dies or goes dormant. So there is this connection to immortality and vitality and health with this plant. Egyptians connected the plant to Osiris in his immortal form, which is cool and weird. This plant is often used to bind things or people together, possibly due to its connection to Hymenaeus, who was a Greek god of marriage. And so we see ivy included in many love and marriage rituals, customs, hand fasting rituals, and spell work. And as all vines are connective and are like reaching out, it represents any energy where we are reaching out and trying to connect with people or community or abundance. Very appropriate for Libra energy. In its capacity to cover the outer walls of buildings, it is employed in protection magics. And it can be also, or excuse me, it can also be found in ancient anti-intoxication tonics. And this is an interesting element that we are going to see pop up a whole lot during this week. First off, in the modern era, we have an International Sobriety Day at the beginning of October. That happens, I think, this week. As well as Sober October is really trending for us this year. And as I said, we're going to have other stuff that pops up this week that sort of points to this idea of sobriety, thinking about intoxication and items or ideas or actions that intoxicate us, and, you know, what all is going on with that conversation. Okay, so that centers us now in the season that we are in and some of the month energies that we are in. So, getting deeply into the grist of the goodness. This is our new micromoon annular solar eclipse at 10 degrees of Libra, 11:49 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Later in the day for everybody else around the planet. And what do we have with a new moon? We have a seed, we have a start, we have an initiation, we have a genesis of something, a beginning of something. This moon is ruled by Venus, who is traveling through Scorpio and does not really enjoy itself in that space. And this moon and its cycle brings emphasis to the cardinal cross. So all of our cardinal signs are a little lit up during the Libra lunar cycle. And of course, that's going to be Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So folks with cardinal placements, Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, Libra lunar cycles may always feel a little extra intense for you or a little extra spicy for you, because you guys are the ones that are going to be experiencing conjunctions, squares, and oppositions. And those are spicy aspects oftentimes. Okay, let's get into it, guys. We're in fall, finally. Thank God. Thank gods. Thank them all. I am a spooky bitch. Okay, I don't know if that's apparent in the fact that I do classes on witchcraft on YouTube, a podcast about witchcraft. Been teaching these classes for 9 years now. Tarot, astrology. It's probably not readily apparent. I am a spooky bitch. I need the dark and the cold. Okay, I'm sorry to all of you summertime witches out there. Suck it up, respectfully. You've had your day in the sun. Go away. It's our turn. Okay, sorry. Generally speaking, new moons are a good time for resetting our altars, starting projects, or starting new habits, setting intentions for the next month, and bringing our inner self, represented by the moon, and our outer self, represented by the sun, into synchronicity. This new moon occurs with an eclipse. It's hanging out near the south node, and it is the first new moon of fall and Mabon season. It also is ruled by Venus and Scorpio, who is in detriment. And that planet is widely opposed by Uranus and Taurus. This moon is also squared by Mars. It's got some challenges. It's got some challenges. And being that it is the new moon at the beginning of fall and Mabon season are really seasons of harvest and results versus beginnings. So let's look at the astrology of this moon. I think that this moon is pretty heavily influenced by the nodes. That we are having a new moon near a node is why we are having an eclipse. That's how that works. That's the planetary mechanics of it all. Anywhere, wherever the nodes are in the sky, and these are, as we have discussed in the past, but let me remind you, most gentle of listeners, the nodes are not physical objects. They are points in the moon's orbit around Earth. That's what's up. And so anytime that we have a new moon or a full moon near one of these hotspots in the moon's orbit, we're going to have some kind of an eclipse. A solar eclipse, a lunar eclipse, partial, complete, whatever. That's how that works. The moon is about memories, impressions, what we've retained from the past, which is, turns out, pretty fucking selective for most people, and how we feel about all of that stuff. And as we know, feelings are not facts, right? I know that's like a funky phrase that can be connected to some funky people, but it is also the truth that feelings are real, but they also are not real for other people necessarily, right? The nodes work like way stations, in my opinion, where we occasionally stop and we think about how the past is influencing our present. Libra, where all of this is taking place, is cool with feelings as long as it's all of the feel-good feelings. Libra energy can get really uncomfortable and avoidant when it comes to difficult or messy or inconvenient emotions. And by inconvenient, I definitely mean things like, we're not talking about that here. We're not talking about that in front of these people. I don't want to make everybody uncomfortable. We're sweeping this under the rug. That type of stuff, okay? This is our last eclipse on the Aries-Libra axis, which is also our Ostara-Mabon axis on the wheel. So I want you to consider something. And some of these phrases I'm going to say over and over again. What have we sown? And what are we harvesting? What have we reaped? I want you to consider the seed and consider the harvest in this work. What have we learned and are ready to integrate or release around how the seed and the harvest are connected? You knew the leftist rant was coming eventually. Here we are. Think on all that we have learned as a people, right, about the world, justice, diplomacy, ethics, and appearances in the last 14 months. All of the illusions that have been revealed, all of the backroom contracts that have been exposed, and all of the ways that social pressure has been used or not used to create change in the world. And I'm going to give you some key dates here. We might be thinking back to like April 20th and October 14th and October 28th in 2023. I don't know if anything fancy was going on around October 14th. Oh, right. Yeah, kinda. Huh. Okay. And then this year, March 24th, April 8th, and September 17th. Think back in you look at the global picture, but also think back in your personal life. Like, what was going on there where suddenly some, like, uncomfortable truths were being revealed about relationships that you were in, or how you interacted with your own ethics or your own morality. Like, this is all stuff that Libra wants to look at, talk about, poke at, deal with. Consider the seeds and consider the harvest. Mercury and the South Node are crowded around this new moon, and Mars, sulking over in Cancer, where it totally does not want to be hanging out, is widely square to this new moon. As the sun is momentarily blotted out because of the solar eclipse, more hidden information might come to light because Mercury is right there, ready to go. It will probably suggest some more uncomfortable change. Hooray! Who isn't excited for that? And we might want to pout. We might be feeling super fussy. And or we might be relying on our memories about what we have chosen to remember to justify our actions in these moments and going forward. We might see passive-aggressive displays, tantrums, fussy behavior in our personal lives and on the global stage. And they might come at some really bad moments for social faux pas. We might see some archetypal partnerships break up, and it might happen in kind of a dramatic fashion. Remember, Mars squaring all of this. Mars loves to yell about stuff, be very dramatic, violent even, right? Or at the very least, let everybody know about their anger. The moon is also conjunct the fixed star Vindemiatrix found in Virgo, right? You were like, wait, we're talking about Libra. How is it conjunct a star found in Virgo? Welcome to me mixing systems. Hi. In sidereal astrology, the moon and the sun both are still in Virgo. This is the precession of the equinoxes, the zodiacal precession. We talk about this in a lot of different places. I talk about it in most of the Wheel of the Year classes, but you can also go to Wikipedia. Oh, we love Wikipedia here. And type in zodiacal precession, P-R-E, not procession, precession, to learn about this planetary mechanic. So, and we talk about the fixed stars quite a bit on this channel, on this podcast. So the moon is also conjunct the fixed star Vindemiatrix found in Virgo. Now, if you've been listening for a long time, you know that normally I save the fixed star stuff for a little bit later on in the podcast, but not this time. I want to talk about it now, and it's my podcast, so I'm going to do what I want to do. Okay. Vindemiatrix is the grape harvester. Harvester of sorrow. Only the first 4 albums from Metallica are worth anything. Sorry. I got a little distracted there. Anyways, this is the grape harvester, aka the being that goes around and harvests the results of actions, right? The being that's going around and being like, welp, what did we do? Welp, how did all that turn out? Welp, what are the results of these things that you were saying or doing or not saying or not doing? This star is often connected to dramatic moments, to put it diplomatically, through its connection to the idea of spirit, as in alcohol, right? Grapes equals booze. So this is a star that is connected to booze, spirits, and the actions that can take place when we are intoxicated. And so here again is that piece about intoxication or sobriety or, whatever is going on there, right? I don't know if you have ever imbibed a substance, but stuff can get a little dramatic, right? And get a little intense sometimes when we are maybe a little high or a little sippy sip drunk or whatever other substances you enjoy. Things can get a little crazy. Things can get a little intense. I have a lot of stuff that comes up for me here. I feel like I could just do a podcast on just this. And it was like, no, there's, as usual, way too much to talk about. But this fixed star points to a lot of the intense crisis moments that can come up from the results of checking out and letting situations run amok. The places where Virgo prudishness, and remember, Virgo and Libra collectively rule the kidneys and the spleen and the upper lower intestines, right? Like these are the organs that we are relying on to filter out these types of substances or deal with them. The places where Virgo prudishness maybe is actually trying to keep us from screwing around when it might actually be in our best interest to stay present, to stay sober, to stay focused, to be paying attention to the little details of things, even if, especially if maybe, we really don't want to. Within the framework of Mabon, I think that this week is a sobering moment to think about, as a society, one, what are we harvesting? What were the seeds, and what are we harvesting? Two, we have plenty of intoxicating elements in our lives. How many times a day are we allowing ourselves to be distracted and numbed while the work piles up and situations deteriorate? Three, as individuals, are our actions and relationships in alignment with and supporting the world that we say that we want to live in? And if not, what is holding us back? All of that said, I don't think that this is an awesome new moon for kicking off a big, giant new project or going through some kind of like complicated initiation ritual or something. I do, however, recommend contemplation, resetting, and journaling. Yes. I've included a shitload of journaling prompts for patrons at the Mercury level and higher. That's a $5 level and higher. Those are the folks who get the notes for the podcast. And there is a pile of stuff in the notes this week that I am not putting in the podcast. But to get you guys started, to get everybody started, and if you are going to seed something on this moon, what I recommend is looking internally at what difficult information or needed adjustments have come up in your relationships, and externally, what difficult information or needed adjustments have come up around justice, ethics, and social appearances. And then your homework is to make a commitment to the long-term changes that you need to address these issues. Consider the seeds, consider the harvest. Okay. I have altar suggestions with plants and animals and foods and incense helpers, a gigantic list of actions for observing this Libra new moon and getting oriented into the totality of this month's lunar cycle. Again, all in the notes for patrons at the $5 level and up. Okay, so now let's take a look at the astrology for this lunar week, running from October 2nd to October 9th. I'm going to talk about a little bit of this stuff, but there's one transit that I am mostly going to focus on. October 4th, we have Venus in Scorpio, trine Saturn retrograde in Pisces at 14 degrees. And this is a great day for putting in some work into your relationships. How wonderful, how appropriate, given everything else that's going on for the week. Thank you very much. On this same day, we see Mars entering its retrograde shadow at Cancer, 17 degrees. We will talk about the Mars retrograde cycle a couple of weeks from now when we get a little closer to it actually kicking off. October 5th, we have Mercury in Libra square Mars in Cancer at 17 degrees. So on the 5th, we might start to see some of the stuff that's coming up for us with the new moon filter out into difficult conversations with other people. And we might find that we are the person that needs to deliver some difficult news, or that people are coming at us with stuff that's difficult to hear. And because it's Mars in Cancer, our first response might be to be passive aggressive about it, or the response from the person on the hearing end might be a little bit of a fussiness, a little tantrum, a little passive aggressive, like, I don't want to hear that, you're only here to give me bad news, blah, blah, blah. So if you can be constructive in that convo, great. If not, maybe hold off for another day or two, until, it's a little more like everybody's on the same page and ready to have this difficult conversation. October 8th, we have 3 different aspects. We have Venus in Scorpio, trine Mars, Cancer, 17 degrees. So here we are 3 days later getting a little bit of help in those what might be potentially difficult conversations in the middle of the lunar week. Same day, October 8th, Mercury in Libra is trine Jupiter in Gemini, 21 degrees. So also assisting with convos. And then also on that same day, Mercury in Libra opposing Chiron in Aries at 21 degrees. And I don't think that that's hurting the conversations. I think that that is an aspect that might emphasize today is a day for me to bring out some of the more painful stuff. Or people may say things to me that hurt to hear, or people may be letting me know that they've been hurt by things that I've said. But Chiron is always here to help us kind of muscle through that kind of work and find the remedy in the pain. And so it's a like, this hurts, but also it needed to happen sort of a thing. And then that brings us to October 9th. And on October 9th, Jupiter stations retrograde in Gemini at 21 degrees. So this is the aspect that I really want to spend a little time with. Jupiter has been traveling through Gemini for some time now. Not excited about it. Not super stoked. Not having the best time ever. Jupiter is in detriment here because Jupiter naturally rules Sagittarius, and Sagittarius and Gemini are opposing signs. And so Jupiter is hanging out in the sign of its opposition, aka this chair is not comfortable. I don't like being here. It smells weird. Can we go now? That's Jupiter's whole attitude. Jupiter can be thwarted, does not feel welcome, generally not having a good time. Okay, and Jupiter retrograde under these conditions is not all bad news, because while Jupiter is in retrograde in the sign of its detriment, the retrograde effects can, not guaranteed, but can actually be lessened. So whatever it is that we normally feel like we can expect from a Jupiter retrograde cycle might be a little mellower this time. Cool. Also, generally speaking, Jupiter retrogrades tend to not be as terrible or funky as other planetary retrogrades. It's sort of like you get less good stuff with a Jupiter retrograde. Instead of more bad stuff, it's like it's just a little bit less good stuff. It's like everything about Jupiter is a little mellowed out. So we may find that Jupiter is sort of just acting like its normal self when we balance out the pluses over here and the minuses over there. This retrograde cycle also is giving us the opportunity to process the Jupiter-Saturn square situation that is hovering in the background, and the lessons that we are getting from that. Jupiter squared Saturn for the first time back in August. It's going to do it again in December, and then it's going to do it again next year in May. And this is a big argument that these two planets have every 5 years that actually can be really illuminating. Folks who picked up my year-long readings at the beginning of the year got clued in big time on this whole process with Jupiter and Saturn and what's going on with it in, their individual charts. So this moment is a little bit of a hot spot in this process. Again, as usual, as I keep saying, there are more notes for patrons in the notes for this podcast. But some key dates for everybody to work with this stuff. You might look back to July 15th. That is when Jupiter entered its shadow at 11 degrees Gemini. Not today, but October 9th, Jupiter stations retrograde at 21 degrees of Gemini. And then in November 18th, Jupiter will oppose Mercury at 18 degrees of Sagittarius. December 4th, Jupiter retrograde will oppose Mercury retrograde at 16 degrees of Sagittarius. Wow, 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 right? And again, we talked about this in the year-long readings. I think, honestly, this is actually going to be a really cool transit. Other people have told me I'm crazy. No shit. But also, I actually think it's going to be cool, but we'll talk about what it can mean for us a little bit more when we get closer to it. And then December 24th, there's like a holiday on December 24th. I have to check my notes. Jupiter retrograde square Saturn at 14 degrees Pisces. What could go wrong? I'm sure it'll be fine. Hanging out with family, election year, insane war all over the planet, Christmas. I'm sure it'll be fine. And then 2 days later, December 26th, we see Jupiter retrograde opposing Mercury, who has stationed direct by that point at 13 degrees Sagittarius. Spicy stuff. So we can see that through the retrograde process, Jupiter's going to have to deal with Saturn. That convo is going to come to a head. That'll be the second retrograde square point between those two planets. And we also see that Jupiter talks to Mercury throughout the retrograde cycle. Mercury retrograde, and then Mercury direct again. All hanging out in the sign of Sagittarius. So potent stuff there for sure. Generally speaking, I see that emphasis with sorry, I'm like digging through my notes, like what was I gonna say about this? The square to Saturn, like I said, is really sort of emphasizing the longer conversation that is happening between Jupiter and Saturn. And then we have the Jupiter Mercury conversation. These are going to be really great dates for studying, but also I want you to watch your promises on those days. Those are going to be days where mentally we can leapfrog from one point to the next and ultimately arrive at, oh yeah, we can totally do that. We can totally pull that off. That is probably one of the biggest pitfalls of Jupiter when it is in retrograde, is it will overpromise and overcommit. Jupiter loves doing that. So pay very close attention on those days to that stuff. That retrograde point on the 4th, Jupiter retrograde opposed Mercury retrograde, we might be doing a lot of second guessing and being like, oh no, what have we said? But it's also a really great day for reassessing things and deeply questioning what is going on in our processes. And then when we get to that third opposition on December 26th, I think that can be a really great time for coming to some resolutions. Our thinking begins to clear up, the answers begin to appear, all of that good stuff. Okay, so that is our astrology for this week and out to December, so you're welcome, I guess. As I have said millions of times, but I'm saying it again, there's way more notes on all of this stuff in the notes for patrons on Patreon. So now let us get into the holy days for this week. We have a lot of really cool shit kicking off this week all over the planet in the past and the present. Surprise, surprise. Running from anywhere in late September all the way through December, from our Japanese friends and ancestors, we have the autumnal festival of Momiji-Gari. And this is literally a cultural festival of celebration and enjoyment of autumn. It's literally what it is. And Japan takes this very, very seriously. They do a very similar thing in spring when the sakura or cherry blossom trees begin to bloom. They literally will post messages and flyers all over various cities all over the island, in subways and public transportation places, so that people know by the hour where is the very best place to go to see the leaf change as it goes through its color change process here in autumn. And so, do you want to see yellow leaves? Do you want to see gold? Do you want to see red? They update it by the hour. And I just love that there is that level of sensitivity on a cultural level to what is going on. It's very, very cool. Okay, also running from October 1st through the 16th from our Cambodian friends and family, we have the festival of Pashum Ben. And Pashum Ben means Ancestors Day. This is a 15-day long festival considered pretty unique to the country. It's one of Cambodia's most important holidays, and the final three are like the super whammo, big time freak out days. But this festival is dedicated to Cambodians paying respect to their deceased relatives. They believe that this is a period where the gates of hell open up, and pretas, or ghosts of the dead, also known as the hungry ghosts, are especially active. So Cambodians will go to shrines and they will go to cemeteries and placate these spirits with food and offerings, as well as the deceased who might be coming to visit who did not necessarily come from hell. But again, folks will give food to Buddhist monks, who, and at temples, or they will go directly to the cemeteries. A lot of Cambodians will wear white clothing during this stuff, and it is customary to throw rice balls into the air or scatter rice across an empty field, feeding ghosts directly with physical food. And I love this symbolism for a variety of reasons, just because it's cool. But we see the color white play really important roles throughout the year. We see rice playing really important roles throughout the year, and grains, right? We're at the end of the grain harvest and stepping into the veg and fruit harvest. So, there's that. But also this idea of feeding the fields as a method of feeding ancestors. And we see that imagery. We have another holiday coming up this week that emphasizes this idea of the ancestors, the beloved dead, literally being underground and participating quite directly in the process of this magical, miraculous food that is coming up out of the earth every year, year after year. I'm not saying that is specifically what Cambodians are thinking about. I'm saying that I see similarities between these systems globally. Cool stuff. All right, so getting into the dates of this actual lunar week, running from October 2nd through November 7th, we have the Orionids meteor showers. We are at the new moon now, and so the peak of the meteor showers this year is going to be right around the peak of the full moon. So you may or may not get good opportunities to check out meteor showers in your area. But what I will say about this is that we find that anytime we see a lot of our ancestor holidays ramp up, we tend to have meteor showers at the same time. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Also, October 7th, as mentioned previously earlier in the podcast, we have our new Micromoon annular solar eclipse at 10 degrees Libra. Also on this day, we have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Vindemiatrix, found in Virgo, as we've already discussed. Also on this day, for our ancient Egyptian friends and ancestors, running from October 2nd to the 14th this year, we have the Opet Festival, which I will talk about here in just a second. We also have feasts for Duamutef, Mut, which are sort of the same being. We have feasts for Horus, and we also have the clothing of Anubis. For our Zoroastrian friends and ancestors, we have Megragan. From our Hindu friends and ancestors, we have Mahalaya Amavasya. For our modern pagan friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of Guardian Spirits, and we also have A.E. Waite, born this day in 1857. A.E. Waite, of course, lending his name to the quite infamous Rider-Waite tarot cards. He was the guy that kind of, well, he put up part of the cash and he did a little bit of the writing. He made a few suggestions for how the cards should go. And then Pamela Coleman Smith was like, I've got this. Thanks so much. I'm glad that you're thinking. Uh, so let's talk about the Opet Festival, because this festival, kind of a big deal. The Opet Festival was a significant annual celebration in ancient Egypt, and it was focused on honoring gods Khonsu, Amun, or Amun Ra, and Mut, or Mut. And the point of the festival was really focused on the fertility of Amun Re and the pharaoh, whoever that might be at that time, who was believed to be the spiritual offspring of Amun Re, the son of the daughter of Amun Re. The festival included a ritual procession of the barks, or the boats, which are ceremonial boats used to transport statues of gods and deities, from Karnak Temple to Luxor Temple, aka Thebes. And then at the temple, a ritual marriage would take place in the birth room between the pharaoh and the gods, spiritually linking them to ensure the pharaoh's fertility and to reinstate the pharaoh as the intermediary between the gods and Egypt. During the marriage ceremony, the pharaoh was ceremonially reborn through a recrowning ceremony, emphasizing the fertile nature of the pharaoh and legitimizing their right to rule, etc., etc. This ancient festival still survives in present day as the feast of Sheikh Yusuf al-Hagag, an Islamic holy man whose boat is carried around Luxor in celebration of his life. This Maulid celebration takes place around the vicinity of the Abu Hagag Mosque. So trippy that there's still remnants of this even to this day. We're talking about 3,000 years of history there, give or take. There are depictions of this festival at Hatshepsut's massive temple that she has. She was pretty baller back in her day. But this also was a festival that sort of reinforced the generosity of the gods, and sort of a like reorienting and a maintaining of the natural order of the universe, or Ma'at, the goddess Ma'at, who was material reality. So Egyptians would make offerings, sacrifices, prayers, all of this great stuff. This is happening at the beginning of the growth cycle for ancient Egyptians, because the summer, way too hot. The summer was thought of as the very end of the old calendar and the beginning of the new calendar, happening in synchronicity with the rising of the fixed star Sothis, which we now call Sirius, which for us happens somewhere between July and August. And way, way, way too hot. Nile crests, it overflows its banks. It floods the floodlands and all of the farming lands. And then as the weather starts to mellow out and the sun starts to cool off a little bit, boom, here we are at the beginning of the growth cycle for ancient Egyptians. And so we have this Opet festival, which lasts, 2 weeks to a month, basically, celebrating and reinforcing and like reestablishing who's in charge and who's doing what and how is all of this stuff going to work out. So very, very cool festival, very big deal for our ancient Egyptian friends and ancestors. All right, October 3rd, as our new moon becomes visible for some folks, for our ancient Greek friends and ancestors, this would have kicked off the month of Pinepsion. For our Roman ancient ancestors and friends, this would kick off Calende October, or the month of October. And for our modern and ancient Jewish friends and ancestors, this kicks off Chodesh Tishri, or the month of Tishri. So, let's get into the holidays. October 3rd through 12th, from our Hindu friends and ancestors, we have the Navaratri festival. This is a big deal. Navaratris happen 4 times a year, and they basically happen in alignment with the seasons as they kick off. The March version is when we see Holi, and the Navaratri version is when we see Diwali. So these tend to be the bigger of the 4, the bigger 2 of the 4. And this is a 9-day festival specifically dedicated to the goddess Durga, who is an aspect of the supreme goddess, Parashakti. And it is held in celebration of her emerging victorious over the demon Mahishasura. In southern states of India, the victory of Durga or Kali is celebrated. And you get all kinds of stuff happening during the celebrations. There's decorations, there's recitals, there's enactments of the story of her battling these demons and winning. These 90s, there's chanting scriptures, all this stuff, but these 90s are also major crop season cultural events. There's competitive design and staging of pandals, which are these fabricated structures that are generally temporary, but they are these huge, like, rebuildings of temples. They're massive, and people go and hang out there and party and have a great time, and like there's a lot of family reunions that happen at this time. Folk dances and folk elements are celebrated from Hindu and Indian past. Some folks might fast during this time. Some of the traditions call for various statues to be taken to a sacred body of water and immersed and washed and brought back. There are other statues that symbolize like the forces of evil that are burnt and decorated with fireworks, etc., etc. And all of this is taking place leading up to Deepavali, or Diwali, which is celebrated at the end of all of this stuff. So, very cool festival, very spicy, very, very, very awesome, colorful, bright, cool. And Durga, if you're not familiar with her, is a badass. She is a warrior goddess. She is sort of the accumulation of a lot of the fierceness from other gods and goddesses. And, you know, basically is just here to kick ass. That's what's up. She's very protective. And so I want you to hold on to that idea of this goddess having this 9-day festival at this time at fall equinox, as we are stepping into the dark half of the year of this, with this protector energy. Also on this same day, from our Southeast Asian friends and family and ancestors, running from October 3rd through the 11th, we have the 9 Emperor Festival, which is, surprisingly enough, also a 9-day festival. This is predominantly celebrated in Thailand. There are huge celebrations that happen in Phuket, but you'll also see big celebrations happening in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, etc., etc. The big core of this is that it is a vegetarian festival. The vegetarian festival attracts crowds of spectators because of the many unusual religious rituals that are performed. As I said, it's basically same time, same place as the Navratri. And the significance of this is basically to commemorate and honor the gods on a large scale, on a big, big scale. And you will see people offering food, burning joss paper, chanting, reading scriptures and chanting scriptures. It's 9 nights of partying and celebrating. There's food stalls set up everywhere. And you basically can eat to your heart's content. And I'm just going to say that, yes, okay, I'm a 9-day festival dedicated to eating. yes. Where do I sign? I'm happy to go. Let's go. In addition to eating pure food, festival participants must keep their thoughts pure and wear white as a symbol of purity. Also, to maintain purity, devout festival participants will abstain from sex, alcohol, and stimulants during this festival. So, here again, we have a little note of staying sober for a moment, or cleaning out for a little while, or having a conversation with yourself about intoxicants and or quote unquote pollutants that you might be putting in your system, and what are the effects of that, or not putting them in your system, and what are the effects of that. And running from October 3rd to October 5th, from our Jewish friends and ancestors, we have Rosh Hashanah. This is New Year's celebration. Happy New Year's, all the Jewishes out there and Jew witches that are out there. Jewish, Jew witch, and Jewish people. I do believe this is the year 5785 for you all, so Happy New Year. Very cool. Rosh Hashanah is a New Year's celebration that kicks off a series of festivals that happen. Rosh Hashanah is followed by Yom Kippur, which is followed by Sukkot. Rosh Hashanah itself is a 2-day observance and celebration that begins on the first day of the month, Tishrei, which we mentioned already. And it is marked and celebrated through raising a noise or blowing through a shofar, which is a hollowed out ram's horn. And while the connection might not be very obvious to me, I think it's very, very interesting to have the symbol of the ram's horn. We've talked about this before on the podcast, but I just think this is cool. That the ram's horn is used to blow and make a sound at this time, at this celebration. When we are basically across the wheel from Aries. Cool stuff, right? Libra is the sign of opposition to the sign of Aries. These are the signs that are in opposition to each other. So there's something there, right? Maybe that's just me making that connection in my own mind, but I think it's a cool connection. Other stuff that we see folks doing, attending synagogue services, reciting special liturgy, as well as enjoying some very festive meals, getting together with friends and family and celebrating and partying and having a good time. And very specifically, like eating symbolic foods like apples dipped in honey, hoping to evoke a sweet new year. Rosh is the Hebrew word for head. So this is definitely thought of as the head of the year. Okay. What else is happening on this day? A lot of stuff. So those are all the like multi-day festivals for October 3rd. That's we've literally gotten 2 days into the lunar week. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I'm back on my bullshit, people. Let's go. All right, October 3rd, we have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Porrima, which is also found in Virgo. And I am going to read directly from the website Astrology King, which is where I get a lot of, not all, but a lot of my information on fixed stars, because he has done a really good job over there at accumulating a lot of information. So, directly from his website, more or less. Porrima comes to us from the ancient Roman goddess of the future and prophecy. I want you to kind of make a note about that. She was also known as Antevorta or Prorursa, which is a contraction of Proversa. The Latins called this Porrima or Antevorta, sometimes Postvorta. And these are the names of two ancient goddesses of prophecy, sisters and assistants of Carmenta or Carmentis, worshipped and at times invoked by their women. Interestingly enough, the fixed star Porrima rules the center of the left kidney. So here comes body parts again that we've already talked about with Virgo and Libra, the kidneys, okay? The Kamene, from who are the priestesses that we're discussing here, were 3 or sometimes 4 in number. Carmentis or Carmenta was the leader of the Carmene, but then we also have Antevorta, Postvorta, and Egeria. Her name was derived from the Latin carere and mens, words meaning devoid of and reason, referring to the state of prophetic frenzy in which she was out of her mind. So we think back to those oracular witches of old days, right? Where they would sit over the open pit and breathe the fumes, or they might take in the toxin from a toxic animal or a reptile, and otherwise take in some type of intoxicant. There it is again, right? And go crazy, quote unquote, right? Lose their mind, quote unquote, or receive the visions, right? Depends on our perspective here, right? So Antevorta and Postvorta were probably at first 2 aspects of Carmenta who in time became important enough on their own to be considered separate goddesses, though they were still generally believed to sort of be sisters or attendants of Carmenta. Their names refer to their prophetic powers that come into play at the birth of a child, both coming from the root vertere, meaning to change, to turn, or to alter. So antevorte then means before the change, and postvorta means after the change. Oh my gosh. Boy howdy, is there a lot to explore there. We don't have time, right? There's no time. But oh my gosh, there is so much symbolism in that idea, right? Think of the great symbolism that we work with, that some pagans and witches and heathens work with, of the idea of the goddess giving birth to the massive harvest that is happening at this time of year. Think about imagery that we have worked with in the past of Virgo and Scorpio, who we will talk about more in the coming months, being these guardians on either side of a gateway, where the baby that is fall equinox, the lamp or the lantern that is Libra, is being brought through the doorway held by Virgo and Scorpio. There's just so much here. There's so much. I love it. Also, when I read that, I had a little moment because I have been sitting with this idea of the wheel turns and the wheel turns, and I am turning in my process as well. And so that Porrima is here with her visions, right? In her intoxicated state, turning, right? And talking about who we are before the turn and who we are after the turn, who we are before the change and who we are after the change. You know, that's that subjective thing that I talk about with a lot of you folks. That's like, that's my witchcraft. That's there for me. That's very cool. Okay. What else do we have happening on this day? We have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Guiana, which we find in the constellation of Crow. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about other stuff that we find in Crow a couple of days from now, later in the podcast, but just kind of, again, put a pin in that there's stuff going on with the constellation of the Crow. What else do we have on this day? The Feast of Horus as the winged disc from our great Egyptian friends and ancestors. The Feast of Horus as the great scepter as well. Just hang on to those images. Winged disc and a winged scepter or a great scepter, okay? Horus, of course, being a deity that is connected to Hermes, aka Mercury, okay? Ruling planet of Virgo. Okay. From our Hopi friends and ancestors, we have Mararu, the women's healing and fertility ceremony happening at this time. From our ancient Roman friends and ancestors, we have sacrifices for the Dies Natalis of the Temple of Fides. Fides being the word where we get fidelity from. Boom! Harkening right back to all of that marriage stuff that we were talking about with ivy, right? And vines and things like that. And then last but not least, from our Orthodox Catholic friends, this is the feast of Saint Dionysius on this day. Dionysius. Wait, isn't that the god of wine? Wait, what? Right. That's what I'm saying. This week weaves back and forth between holidays that sort of celebrate or acknowledge or witness the power of intoxication and the deities and the aspects and the celebrations and practices that are connected to the plants that we derive these intoxicants from. And at the same time, there's sort of being this warning or this attitude of holding back, or this attitude of reservation or temperance in a way that we normally don't work with, or that I don't work with the word temperance, right? To scale back a little bit, to moderate. Maybe that's a better word to work with here. Right? So there's something here. There's something here this week in all of this symbolism that's really encouraging us to look at, what are we doing with intoxicants? What is an intoxicant for us? And how are we interacting with it? Are we interacting with it in ways where we're trying to derive wisdom that's going to help other people? Or are we working with this in ways that are giving us permission, quote unquote, to check out or lose control? Interesting stuff. October 4th, for our ancient Egyptian friends and ancestors, kicks off the month of 3 Akhet, or Akhet number 3. Their month calendar system is interesting compared to the way that we do stuff, but that's that. And for our ancient and modern Islamic friends and ancestors, this kicks off the month of Rabi al-Akhar. Interesting that they have a very similar name there. Okay, what else is going on? 10-4, from our Yoruba friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of Orunmila. I've gone in on a couple of other years on Orunmila. Not going to talk about him a whole lot, but Orunmila is the Orisha of wisdom, knowledge, and divination. So here again, we have another entity, another holiday, another moment of recognizing these beings, these people that oversee divinatory practices, knowledge, wisdom, etc., etc. Also on the same day, from our Catholic friends and ancestors, we have the feast of Saint Francis of Assisi, who was very into animals, very much an animal protector, if we remember. And on the same day, globally, in the modern era, we have a celebration of World Day for Animals. And this is in the midst of the 9-day festival that is the Vegetarian Festival, happening for billions of people throughout Southeast Asia. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Or it's literally on purpose. So this whole week is also a week for, if you are a meat eater, a flesh eater, maybe don't for this week, and look into that. See what that's all about for you. I'm not telling you what to do with your diet. You know what's safe and healthy for you. But I'm suggesting that, if there are animal products that you eat all the time, try going without them for a week if that's safe and healthy for you. See what happens. Just see what happens, right? Zero agenda. Just take some notes. As we always say, just journal in your book of shadows. Going a week without milk, going a week without cheese, going a week without beef, right? Maybe I'll eat the other meats, whatever it is. Participate in this practice and see what it does for you. Okay. 10-5, October 5th, from our ancient Egyptian friends and ancestors, we see the return of Wadjet and the return of Mut or Mut. This is part of the Opet festival. Also on this day, from our Byzantine friends and ancestors, we have the Day of the Holy Spirit for Sophia. Sophia is another entity that I have gone in very hard in previous podcasts. We don't have time this year because the other stuff I want to focus on. But Sophia is the embodiment of knowledge, wisdom, knowing. A very, very powerful and sacred goddess. And so with a lot of our themes, right, we have this very interesting sort of over theme developing through our holidays and our observances that are happening throughout this week, our fixed star risings, all of this stuff around intoxication and sobriety, purity, quote unquote, right? Like cleaning out the body, healing the body after labor, all of that stuff, right? But purification, as I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, like the broadcast at the beginning of the podcast, this idea of purification, right? Cleaning out the body, whatever that means for us on a subjective level. But we're getting all of these hints on how to do that from all these different festivals and observances throughout time and around the planet. As well as there being something about interacting with or not interacting with various types of substances to derive an oracular or divinatory headspace and tap into wisdom and knowing and knowledge and assistance and information and all of that stuff. Very, very cool. Very weird. And then also, woven throughout all of this stuff is this protector goddess energy, right? We've already had a few hints of that. So, moving into October 6th, we see the waxing crescent moon finally shows up at 29 degrees of Scorpio. I'm guessing that some people are like, where's the blah, 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 the plant body work? Oh my gosh, what are we doing? The body work. That's all in the notes for patrons. I don't know if I'm going to keep it that way, but I may be from now going forward only putting that information in for patrons, but you can always go back and listen to other podcasts to get that information. But we will be stepping into the waxing crescent moon, 29 degrees of Scorpio. So here is our Scorpio energy that we've been kind of hinting at throughout this week so far. Also on this day, starting October 6th and running through October 10th, we have the Draconids meteor showers. And again, these are sort of happening right in between the new moon and the full moon. So depending on where you are on the planet, you may actually have some good nights for checking out shooting star showers. Also on October 6th, we have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Algorab, also found in the Crow constellation. All right, tuck in because we are going in on this one. First of all, Algorab is one of the 15 Bahenian fixed stars. We don't have time to talk about what exactly the Bahenian fixed stars are, but they are a collection of 15 fixed stars that are especially potent for folks that do stuff with fixed stars, whether that's planetary magic, stellar magic, astrology, etc. Side note, stay hydrated, people. Okay. Its image is a raven or a snake or a person dressed in black. It holds crow energy. Ultimately, this star represents cunning energy, scavenger energy, and trickster energy-ish. But it also represents this fierce protector energy, and that's a big part of that cunning thing. Okay, so also on this same day, from our ancient Egyptian friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of Wadjet. Who is Wadjet? Wadjet is often depicted as a snake. Boom, boom. She is a goddess, and she is the protector of country, the landscape itself, the material world itself, protector of the pharaoh, and protector of the gods. The Egyptian word wood signifies the colors green and blue. Now, this really dialed me in. I loved this because, first of all, in some magical systems and if you're getting the notes, patrons, you will see this color prominently. The color emerald, that emerald green, is directly connected to Libra, and a deep green blue color, that's like a deep, rich turquoise color, is connected to Scorpio. Okay, interesting. But this is also the name for the well-known Eye of the Moon. And if you look up Wadjet, especially if you're Goth, you'll probably recognize this symbol as the Great Egyptian Eye. Wadjet was usually depicted as just an Egyptian cobra, a venomous snake, right? And so here we're connecting to those oracular traditions, past and present, that might have been doing a little snake handling, right? Or taking in the intoxicants of a snake to experience a spiritual and or oracular state. In later times, Wadjet was depicted as simply a woman with a snake's head, or a woman wearing the uraeus, which is sort of the snake piled up on top of the head, or a lion-headed goddess wearing the uraeus. And some folks are like, nope, that's just Sekhmet wearing the uraeus, and then other sources are like, nope, that's Wadjet. So maybe there's deeper connections between Wadjet and Sekhmet. I would probably say so, but also we don't have time to get into that. The uraeus originally had been her body alone, which wrapped around or was coiled upon the head of the pharaoh or another deity. I want you to think about the images of ivy wrapping themselves around things, right? Yeah. In her snake form, she is depicted as striking and biting those who would try to harm the king, which is why she is featured as a protective symbol on crown emblems and amulets. Wadjet is also depicted as an Egyptian cobra with large, colorful wings. And winged serpents certainly are a deity form that we work with in a bunch of other places around the planet, doing a whole lot of fancy stuff. We don't have time to get into it. Another early depiction of Wadjet is a cobra entwined around a papyrus stem. And this is like at least 3100 BCE. So we're talking about an image that is at least 5,000 years old. And this is thought to be the first image that shows a snake entwined around a staff symbol. This is a sacred image that appears repeatedly in the later images and myths of cultures surrounding the Mediterranean Sea, called the caduceus, which of course is a common symbol connected to Mercury and Hermes, the planet ruling Virgo. Her image also rears up from the staff of the flagpoles that are used to indicate deities, as seen in the hieroglyphs for Uraeus and for goddess in other places. Wadjet can also be found in the form of a vulture, who is a scavenger bird just like a crow. Some reliefs depict Wadjet in her avian form, hovering over the heads of kings and pharaohs. And even more weirdly and cool, Wadjet is occasionally depicted as a mongoose. Notably, this depiction of the mongoose serves as an antithesis to that of the cobra as its natural predator. And boy, is there a lot to unpack in that we don't have time to get to. But just thinking about the work that we are doing as we are stepping into fall and Libra season of learning how to balance the two halves of ourself. What? Get out of here. Come on. It's so good. It's so good that it's too good. Oh, yeah. Okay. Witchcraft. Woo. Okay. And when, we had just a couple days before, right? The Feast of Horus as the winged disc, the Feast of Horus as the great scepter, right? So here is the serpent wrapping itself around the scepter with the wings and the sun. It's good times, people. It's good times. Okay. Also on this same day from our Roman friends and ancestors, we had the Aennium Cereris, which I'm going to talk about more in just a second. And from our Mexican friends and ancestors, we have the Day of the Virgin of Zapopan. And Zapopan, the Virgin of Zapopan, is connected to a deep Mesoamerican goddess who is connected to corn, and if I'm remembering correctly, I apologize if I'm not remembering this correctly, but the harvest, etc., etc. So very, very cool stuff. Very, very cool stuff. Yeah, been tripping out on the symbolism here a little bit, guys. I don't know if that's obvious, but I think it is. All right, moving on to October 7th. From our Tiwa friends and ancestors, we have the deer dance, because of course, deer and other assorted animals of the same ilk are absolutely doing their thing at this time of year and coming off of their late summer mating high and mellowing out a little bit. From our Sumerian friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of Bao, the sky goddess. From our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the opening of the Mundus Cereris number 2, which I will talk about more in just a second. And also from our ancient Roman friends and ancestors, we have the festival for Bacchus. That's right, the god of wine and intoxication. Hello. And the festival of Mania or the Manes. So mania was, derived ultimately this entity, this spirit that was, the spirit of intoxication, basically, and like how out of control that can get. So here again, we have these festivals that are recognizing and acknowledging drink and also intoxication and also the difficult and the easy parts of working with substance. And what else on this same day from our Romanian friends and family, ancient and ancestors? We have the Dionysiad, the wine festival. So here again, throughout this portion of the year, we have this weaving back and forth between cleaning the body out and then thinking about the work of intoxication and what is all of that for, whilst thinking about invoking the spirits of wisdom and knowledge and information and data, Hermes, Sophia, Virgo, etc., etc. All of this stuff. Okay, so coming back to this Mundus Cereris situation. Okay, the Mundus Cerealis, or the Mundus Cereris, the Cereris, Mundus, the world of Ceres, is what that means, was a hemispherical pit or underground vault in Rome, now lost, quote unquote. My guess it's under the Vatican. That's just my guess. Conspiracy. Dun-na-na. Okay. It was usually sealed by a stone lid, known as the lapis manalis, and at 3 different times of year, this is the second of the 3, it was opened with the official announcement of Mundus Patet. The Mundus is open. And offerings were made there to agricultural and underworld deities, including Ceres as the goddess of the fruitful earth and guardian of underworld portals. So here again, as I mentioned before, we have this connection between overworld abundance and harvest, right? And underworld ancestor work, seeds, feeding the dead, etc., etc. It's opening, and I'm reading this directly out of Wikipedia. If you want to read more, you can just go directly to Wikipedia and type in the Mundus of Ceres. Its opening offered the spirits of the dead temporary leave from the underworld to roam lawfully amongst the living. Basically a holiday for the dead, a holiday for ghosts. The days when the Mundus was open were among the very few occasions that Romans made official contact with the collective spirit of the deads, the Dimanes. Manes, or manes, as in mania. This possibly secondary or late function of the Mundus is first attested to some fancy dudes. Okay, whatever. The place, the Mundus Cereris itself, the world of Ceres, was understood to hold the shape of the reflection or the inversion of the dome of the upper heavens. So it was like this scooped out vault in the ground. And it was a type of a pit altar or a megaron used also in Demeter's Thesmophoria, that holiday coming up soon. So there is this idea of feeding the ancestors here too, and that this being an integral part of the year-long ceremony of taking care of the soil, planting seeds, raising crops, and ultimately harvesting those crops. Cool stuff. Very, very potent stuff. Very, very cool stuff. Okay, moving on to October 8th. October 8th through 10th, from our Mexican friends and ancestors, we have the festival of Wima. From our Iroquois friends and ancestors, we have the Squash and Harvest Festival. From our German friends and ancestors, we have Erntedanke Fest, which is a fall, autumn celebration type festival. From our Catholic friends and ancestors, Our Lady of Good Remedy. Also from our Catholic friends and ancestors, the Feast of St. Demetrius. And on the global level, hallelujah, it is Global International Lesbian Day. Enjoy, lesbians. I do, in fact, enjoy lesbians. Moving on to October 9th, the end of our lunar week. Running from October 9th through the 17th, we have Navapad Oli from our Jain friends and ancestors. Running from October 9th to the 13th, we have Durga Puja from our Hindu friends and ancestors. This is the wrap-up and / continuation of the Navaratri festivals that we talked about towards the beginning of the podcast. From our modern pagan friends and ancestors, running from October 9th through the 11th, we have the Feast of the Goddesses of Wisdom. So again here, there is this, accumulation of all of this stuff. We have the Durga festival that's celebrating this intense warrior goddess, then Goddesses of Wisdom being celebrated by modern pagans, right? This looping together of these ideas. And almost last but not least, from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the Dies Natalis for Jupiter Fulgur, who is the lightning bolt of Jupiter, and Juno Curitis, one of the many, many forms of Jupiter. Okay, excuse me, of Juno. I'm supposed to say an ad here. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and if you can support the work, please join me at Patreon. Thanks, previous Megan, for putting that in the notes, because I totally forgot to say that at any other time. Okay, so that is our schedule for the week. That's the stuff that we're dealing with. Thinking about intoxication, thinking about not being intoxicated, and like, where do those two states sort of bump up against each other? Where is there friction? Where is it weird there? And also, when is it right and good for us to involve ourselves with substance in the pursuit of knowledge, wisdom, the secrets, etc., oracular powers, and when is it right to clean out? And the fact that there is the inclusion of like the day for St. Francis of Assisi and the World Global Day for Animal Welfare and our Vegetarian Festival, there is something here also about the idea of not only it being good for you, right? But maybe it's also good for these other systems for you to not be taking from them right now. As hinted by our various fixed star risings that we have throughout the week, there is some suggestion of like there are pros and cons to imbibing or being intoxicated. There are pros and cons to sobriety, right? Both have their easy and their hard parts. Both have their benefits and both have their drawbacks. Okay, cool. But also, we might be running through a stretch of astrology, a stretch of world events, a stretch of a moment in our lives where, even if we don't want to, it's totally in our best interest to be sharp, to be aware, to be able to be focused if we need to be, and be able to keep track of and pay attention to the little details of things. It won't last forever, but it might be really helpful for us in the moment to do that. To clean out, to straighten up. Well, we're never straight, but but to clean out a little bit, to reorient, to recalibrate, right? All of that good stuff. Okay. I've given you some journaling suggestions throughout. Any place where I'm asking you a question, ask yourself that question. Use that as a start for a journal prompt. But the other tool I'll give you for this week is to hang out with the tarot card, the Three of Swords. Who doesn't love hanging out with the Three of Swords, right? It's a spicy card. That card talks about the difficult moment of our steely, logical brain, right? Just data, just information, just knowledge, running up against the softness and the subjectiveness of our emotions and our heart. And there being some of our experiences with that card can be really feeling shut down on the emotional level, or like feeling like we're getting told to shut it down on the emotional level by the cold, cruel world, right? And like, we got to get wise, we got to get hard, we got to get, stern about stuff. The Three of Swords is connected to the idea of Saturn traveling through Libra, where it is exalted. We don't have Saturn in Libra right now. Saturn is hanging out in Pisces right now. So we're just working with the idea. But in that card, we're seeing this totally exposed heart run through with these three swords and then surrounded by storm clouds. So excite, right? Who isn't down for that kind of party? Woot. But what it can talk about, like I said, on one end is that experience of like wearing your heart on your sleeve and then coming up against the cruelties of the world and like, whoa, it's mean out here. What the heck? But on the other side of this card, it can also express the experiences of saying to ourselves, man, this is an environment where they might not want to hear what I have to say, and I might really frickin' take it on the chin right now, but I need to say what needs to get said, and I'm going to take that risk, and I'm going to step into these environments where people would prefer to sweep things under the rug and keep it cute and keep it tidy on the social or the political level. But you know what? Today, we're going to say the truth, and I'm probably going to have some backlash, and it's probably not going to feel good. And I still have to say this. I still have to be present for this conversation. I still got to participate in this process. So the Three of Swords is a tough card, and it's a card that a lot of us can find ourselves, in, right? Or dealing with subject matter of that, of like, who's going to win in this argument? My emotions, my heart, or my brain, my mind? And, the homework there is, can we find a pathway through that balances these two states of being? It might not feel like that initially. Hence the depiction of the image on the card. It might not feel like that. It might really feel like, wow, I'm really putting my heart-centered self through it by trying to walk in these spaces that are very steely and cold. But, to what end, right? If we think about, again, all this intoxication stuff that we talk about this week, and all of this like dealing with goddesses and entities of wisdom and dealing with goddesses and entities of protection, there is a very interesting combination of stuff going on here. Do we take in the poison? Do we invite in the oracular state? Do we walk a tightrope? Do we stay on the narrow and steady, right? Do we stay sober and alert? Do we invoke or evoke these entities of wisdom and knowledge? And all the while taking care to feed the beloved dead, right? To reach out to the beloved dead, the ancestors, the folks that came before us who also had to struggle with all of these types of situations and these types of world events, who are now hopefully resting to some extent, right? Underground, chilling, helping push up the crops of the harvest. And we're throwing some of that energy back at them too. That's all we're doing this week. Just a little bit of everything ever. Very classic for air sign stuff. But all of that to say that we're not doing it the day of the new moon. We're doing all of that stuff in the following days, etc. of the new, right? Because with that solar eclipse, we want to just let that energy chill and be cool and take care of itself. All right, my witches. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode of Spinning the Wheel. Whatever you choose to do this week in terms of substance or vegetarianism or any of that, or feeding the dead or any of that good stuff, I hope that you do it with the now in mind and the future in mind and the past, right? Just a little time traveling, just a little multi-dimensional witchcraft is all. I want you to be thinking about the seeds, and I want you to be thinking about the harvest. And we are in the midst of the harvest right now, and it's a real blinders off kind of a moment, okay? So I want you to just sit with the uncomfortable truths that are presenting themselves, and then I want you to make commitment to yourself and to your loved ones, your community, your family, your people, your village, your whomstever, that you are committed to the uncomfortable work and the uncomfortable adjustments that need to take place. They're not going to all happen overnight, so don't hold yourself to that kind of a standard. But they have to happen. They may already be happening. That might be a part of the discomfort that you're feeling in life on a regular basis right now. It's because you are making those adjustments. I would be remiss also if I didn't say that we are in the midst of having a lot of really big strikes happening around the United States and around the world. Goddess bless and keep all laborers who are participating in strikes. If you can support striking workers in any way possible, please do so. You are supporting your community. And if striking is something that you just are like, what? I don't understand that stuff. Do a little research on it. Look at why people do it. What is it that unions are accomplishing when they're doing that? And what benefits have we received as a society from strikes? I'm going to be talking about striking. I know, hey, leftist rant, surprise, surprise. I'm going to be talking about striking as a measure of change in society in future podcasts coming up soon, because we have some other astrology that is in alignment with these strikes. Okay, but that's it. That's it for now. That's it for now. We're going to call it. I hope that is good. I hope your cup is full. And I hope that you do good work this week, my witches. Blessed be.